Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. That was, you don't know it, but that was the second time I said hello. I forgot this little thing called the mute button for a minute. Must be a Monday, but you know what? We're all here and we're going to be talking about wide receivers. Matt, Dennis, how was your weekend?
My weekend was great. I actually got invited by the one and only John Hamlers to go to a draft, one of his home leagues. It was an auction, and they had a guy that couldn't make it, and he asked me if I could come and fill in. So I went up to Westerville and hung out with John and 11 of his friends, and I drafted a team for some dude I've never met. I'm like, well, here's my phone number if he's got questions. Why I did what I did.
It was good. I did had my redraft, my longest running redraft home league / work league. So it was fun to get back with everybody. Feel like I have a pretty good team. Excited for fantasy football to start back up here.
Yes, well,
I feel like I crushed this auction. The only mistake I made was I didn't spend up enough on quarterbacks, and I ended up with Daniel Jones as his quarterback, and I had like $10 left over, so I probably could have paid up for Justin Herbert or Trevor Lawrence, who were my other targets, but they were nominated early, and I was just a little bit scared. Sorry to interrupt you there, Matt.
It's all right. Preseason games are over, so we are closer to actual action. And that means Josh Jacobs is back in town. He agreed to a new one-year deal. Dennis, I know you've been fretting about Josh Jacobs, and for most of the last few weeks, do you feel better now?
I have not been fretting. I have believed. I am a believer. I've fretted more about the fact that Josh McDaniels is in charge and Jimmy Garoppolo and a cast of hundreds is going to be quarterback. That gives me more pause than actual Josh Jacobs holdout. I mean, I'm glad he's back. Let's hope they can have a functional offense. We saw what he could do last year. I think he's going to have a good year. I like him as a talent. And yeah, so I'm covering up my insecurity by saying I was always sure, but it was a little nerve-wracking at times.
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
you might have Jonathan Taylor on too.
It's obviously a good thing. I think if you roster Jacobs, we all hoped he'd come back and probably going to smash and be a top 5 running back again. So it's good to see him back and kind of going to dominate an offense that's probably going to be very bad. So,
yeah, but not in week 1.
Yeah,
week 1. In unsurprising news, Kyler Murray will stay on the PUP list and won't get activated going into the season. But in more surprising news, the Cardinals elected to cut Colt McCoy. Matt, does this just, the Josh Dobbs, Clayton Tune experiment, does it feel like a full-on tank job?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've mentioned it before. I know it's been a while since I've been here, but feel like the Cardinals are going to do everything they can to get Caleb Williams, and it makes sense. He's an amazing, even if they don't end up keeping him, having that number 1 pick and having someone trade up to get Caleb Williams is a will be a king's ransom to get anyway. So I don't see why not. I mean, throw out. Hey, Josh Dobbs won the Titans a game last year, didn't he? I think he won him a game. He did not. Okay, well, he started over Malik Willis. I know that.
They ended on
He looked okay though.
They ended on like a 6-game losing streak, so I know he couldn't have won any of those games, but he did look better than Malik Willis.
Speaking of Malik Willis, he's looked serviceable. Like,
okay,
I've picked up a couple shares this offseason watching him, thinking, you know what, if he can sit for another year or two, he might just be able to be the successor.
Well, speaking of serviceable, the other minor piece of news, Pierre Strong, who was once the hope of Patriots fanboys everywhere to have a major role in the Patriots backfield, has been traded to the Browns. So, Dennis, we know this is not going to impact Nick Chubb one iota, but is this a worrying sign for Jerome Ford?
So, long live J.J. Taylor. Pierre Strong is a little bit smaller. I do think it impacts Ford. Ford does a couple things well, one of which is not going side to side. I was looking earlier, kind of comparing them athletically. Strong is about 5'11" and 202. Ford's about 5'10" and a half, 18 or something like that. So he's a little bit bigger, a little more powerful, and he's fast. Ford is fast, and he is a good pass catcher. Showed a little bit of that in college. But, man, he had an awful three-cone. His three-cone was 7.31. Strong is just as fast, and he had a 6.95 three-cone. Strong is just a little bit more explosive overall than Ford. A little better athlete, and maybe more. Unfortunately, Strong may be a little bit more suited to be the Kareem Hunt, and Ford the backup or the handcuff. We'll have to see how it shakes out. I think in the first couple of weeks, we're looking at Jerome Ford as the primary backup, but it could shake out a little bit different after a couple of weeks once Strong gets settled in there.
I personally don't think it really means anything. I think overall Ford's the better player. I mean, the fact that New England, I think you could argue their backfield is worse off than the Browns is, at least because they have Nick Chubb and they were that ready to get rid of him. I think he's more going to end up being probably a special teams guy. I mean, the Browns have some interesting players behind Ford as well. He's been in the system. I think that he is a good receiver as well. I mean, a lot of people may not remember. I believe he was a high 4-star, might even have been a 5-star coming out of high school. And the only reason it took him so long to get to the NFL was because he transferred to Cincinnati at a time when the NCAA did not allow the free transfer rule. So he had to sit a full season before actually getting a chance to play. I think he's a really talented back. I think Pierre Strong's really just coming in as depth for the room. I mean, if we're being honest, behind Chubb and Ford, I don't have any faith in Jordan Wilkins, John Kelly, Hassan Hall, or Demetric Felton. I don't think any of those guys are anything. I just think Strong's coming in to be depth behind Chubb and Ford.
Remember that Hall of Fame game when John Kelly, I was told he was going to be an incredible asset in the season.
I didn't watch it, so I couldn't tell you.
I don't think they're going to be much behind Chubb either. That's why I have Chubb as my RB1 this year.
Well, we did the running backs last week. This week we are wrapping up our redraft rankings with a look at wide receivers, and today we are starting with number 50 through 26. So, Matt, I'm going to let you kick it off and give us your number 50 to number 41.
All right, so at 50, I have Kadarius Toney. I don't know that's – I feel like that's probably close. I don't know exactly where you guys have him. I just don't. He's a player that I just have to see it to believe it. I don't think that he's anything special. I know that he can supposedly bend his legs like he's got no muscles or bones in him and do all this cool shifty stuff, but it just hasn't produced on the field at all.
That's probably why.
I don't. I don't think he's anything special personally. But I mean, a top 50 wide receiver in fantasy is still good. A lot of that is because of the offense. For me, I have Darnell Mooney at 49, would definitely be higher, but obviously the addition of DJ Moore, I think, is going to hurt him a little bit. I still think Cole Kmet's going to be a big part of that offense. He's probably going to be like your best ball guy in this offense. Like, you're going to like having him on your team at times when he ends up going off for you, and there's going to be weeks he's probably going to get you like 3 points and you're going to hate your life, especially if you started him. Josh Palmer, that's all just about the offense and them needing weapons. Same with Zay Jones. Sky Moore, I do have above Kadarius Toney. I think that this is going to be the year that he does something, and maybe I'll be wrong on that, and it ends up being Toney's better than Sky Moore. I personally thought Sky Moore was the better player coming out of college. It is very hard for those guys for those who don't know, he made the jump straight from G5 to the NFL. And we've seen players struggle to go G5 to P5, and he skipped a whole step going into the NFL. I think this guy Moore has a chance to really have a good season this year. 45, I have George Pickens. I mean, I don't know what the Steelers offense is going to be personally. I think it's mainly going to be the Najee Harris show, if I'm being honest. Kenny Pickett, I think, is going to target one of those guys, and as you'll see later on, we get further up in the rankings. In my opinion, that's going to end up being Deontay Johnson for how high I have him ranked. Pickens makes some great plays, and I know everybody was freaking out about the catch he made pushing off on the defender and catching the ball over him. He did that all in college like once every 3 weeks, and he kind of did that last year too. He had like this one big catch, and everybody celebrated him breaking out, and then he went back to not doing anything again. Like, he's a flashy player, but he's not consistent. 44, I have Jerry Jeudy. I just don't know what to think about the Broncos offense. I kind of put him and Cortland Sutton down further than I feel comfortable doing, if I'm being honest. But and this is full transparency, I have not watched a lot of the preseason, so maybe the Broncos have looked good. I don't know. But I just have some fears of what that offense is going to be. I believe he got hurt recently as well, so I don't know what his season outlook's going to look like. So 44 for right now, I think, is a fair spot to put him. Rashad Bateman at 43. He's one that I think probably could finish higher. I think he has a chance to be the number 2 in this offense. I just don't know with Zay Flowers. I don't know if Todd Monken's going to throw the ball more. I think he's going to. I know Mark Andrews is going to be a stud. I just don't know who could. I think it could be Odell, and I didn't even rank Odell. So, I'm really confused on what's going to happen behind Mark Andrews in this offense. 42, Treylon Burks, bringing DeAndre Hopkins over. I just don't know that Ryan Tannehill can support 2 wide receivers, and I think Hopkins is going to get a majority of the share. And then at 41, Jordan Addison, and he's another one that I think could be a little bit higher because obviously Justin Jefferson is going to be double-teamed a lot, I would expect, throughout the season, so that should give Addison some time. But we saw last year, Adam Thielen, who definitely is not as dynamic as Jordan Addison, but he really kind of became just like a big red zone threat. We kept hoping KJ Osborne was going to break out. That didn't happen. So, I didn't want to put Jordan Addison too high because I would not be surprised if we still see, JJ getting like 60% of the target share, and Addison is just good, but not great.
Well, I've got OBJ at 50. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I know 50 it's not high, but I feel like just bringing that veteran presence to that team. I think Lamar is going to want to get him involved. I think it's going to be an up and down season, but I think, with him potentially missing a few games because he just, seems to get injured a lot this year, but he can still be pretty explosive. Probably has lost a little bit of a step, but he's still an excellent route runner, phenomenal hands. I've got Odell at 50. I've got Jacoby Myers at 49. I simultaneously feel like I'm too low and too high on this one. Like, Myers is a reliable receiver, but I feel like Devontae Adams is going to get so many targets because they're going to have to feed Adams to keep him happy on a team that's probably not going to be great. At 48, I've got Romeo Doubs. He's going to be the wide receiver 2 in Green Bay on a team that's going to grow together. There's a lot of questions about how the Packers receiving core, tight ends and wide receivers both, is going to grow with Jordan Love. Is he going to be serviceable? Is he going to be good? Is he going to be awful? We just don't know. but we've seen in training camp that Watson is the big play guy and Dubs is the guy that's the more consistent intermediate guy. Dubs will probably lead in targets. Watson probably leads him in yardage. At 47, I've got Quentin Johnston. Listening to the news the last day or so, I should probably swap Johnston out with somebody. Looks like Josh Palmer has won the wide receiver 3 role in Los Angeles with the Chargers. I think Johnston is going to be, he's the successor to Big Mike Williams. He's going to get some opportunity, but I don't know if he's going to be consistent enough to be at wide receiver 47 without an injury. That being said, we've seen Keenan and Big Mike both have injuries over the course of their careers, though not really enough to be called injury prone. So I got Quentin Johnston at 47, Elijah Moore at 46. This gives me pause for one reason. I like what Moore has flashed, and it seems like after spending $252 million on Deshaun Watson, that they want to throw the ball. However, at his core, Stefanski tends to be a little more conservative. Do I think that Moore can be a wide receiver 4? In the end, I settled on yes. So I like Moore. I think he's going to be the second wide receiver in 2 wide receiver sets. He'll be in the slot in 3 wide receiver sets. So I think he's going to get his opportunities to produce. At 45, I've got Treylon Burks. He is expected to be back and healthy for week 1. I think having DeAndre Hopkins on the other side of the field to draw defenders away from you and Derrick Henry in the backfield to draw safeties up to the line, I think that bodes well for Treylon Burks. I've got Juju Smith-Schuster at 44. Somebody in New England's got to catch the ball, right? I mean, pick one somewhere. I don't think Mack is a terrible quarterback. We'll see what happens with Bill O'Brien back at OC. I don't think he's a great quarterback either. He brings you nothing in the running game. So he's your quintessential QB 18. But we've seen in the past those quarterbacks can produce fantasy relevant wide receivers. At 43, I've got Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's another one I could miss on just due to sheer volume. I think DK Metcalf is the one there. Tyler Lockett has a lot left in the tank. But we've seen JSN produce, and I think he's going to get the opportunity to produce. There's certainly some questions about how much they want to run the ball with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, and so that might be a fly in the ointment there. But they don't throw the ball much to the tight end, so it will be the wide receiver show in the passing game. I've got Sky Moore at 42. I love Sky Moore this year. Somebody's got to be the wide receiver 1 there. Why not Sky Moore? He's in the second year in the system. He's looked good in preseason. I think there are some people higher on Rashee Rice. Kadarius Toney just scares the hell out of me. I just don't think he's going to be a factor. I think there will be games where he's a factor. I just don't think he's going to play enough snaps, get enough targets, catch enough balls. 41, I got Nico Collins. Made a beautiful catch on a nice ball in the Texans game Sunday night. There's a lot of questions about what's happening in Houston, but the top 3 there is Collins and Robert Woods and I forget the third one. I was just looking at the depth chart earlier.
Mechie, maybe.
No, Mechie's listed as a 2. Dell is listed as a 2. I forget who the third one was.
Noah Brown.
Noah Brown. That's it. So, and he's a glorified blocker. So I like Nico Collins. 40, am I stopping at 41 or not?
Yep, we can stop it there. So for me at 50, I have Michael Gallup. I think he's going to have a little bit better year. I still like the Cowboys, apparently. Number 49, I have Jahan Dotson. Howell has looked not too bad this preseason. We already have Terry McLaurin dealing with some injuries. I think Dotson looks like he's ready to step up a little bit this year. Number 48, I have Zay Jones. He had a pretty good season for the Jaguars last year. I think he's still their third wide receiver. So I think there's still some promise there. I have Sky Moore at 47. I don't have him and Kadarius Toney too far apart. It's really, like we've mentioned, it's hard to know exactly what Kansas City is going to do. One of these guys could end up being a lot better than where we've got him, but it's hard to know right now. I have Rashad Bateman at 46. I guess I'm leaning more in Matt's direction of thinking that he might be the one that's the better of the wide receivers. It's going to probably be either him or Beckham. It's hard to tell at this point. I have Treylon Burks, same place as Dennis, at 45. I think with Hopkins there, not an incredibly high volume pass offense. Finishing as wide receiver 45 would be a step in the right direction for Burks this year after last year. I have Jordan Addison at 44, maybe a little low, but I still think probably the top two targets for Minnesota are going to be Jefferson, which just gets a ton, and then Hawkinson at tight end. Number 43, I have Tyler Boyd. His ADP is never super high, but he just keeps contributing there. It's a very high volume offense, so I think he could potentially even outplay this ranking. 42 for me, I have Josh Palmer. I still like him. I think he's been a little bit of the forgotten man for the Chargers. His ADP is much lower than Quentin Johnson. I think he's going to have a better year, and I think he's still going to be a part of their future. He led them in targets and receptions last year. And then 41, I have Kadarius Toney. I still don't know what to make of the Chiefs. I would be happy if none of them finished in the top 50, if we're being honest. Dennis, do you want to kick off the next 10, go 40 to 31?
I will. So at 40, I've got Cortland Sutton. I keep going back and forth between Sutton and Judy and who I want to have higher and how close I want to put them together. Like there's a big part of me that wants to put them back to back because I just don't know. But in the end, I do think Sutton is going to be he'll finish as the number 2 wide receiver for the Broncos. So I've got Cortland Sutton at 40. I've got Gabe Davis at 39. I'm still in. I know they got Dalton Kincaid and they're running 11 and a half personnel or whatever the hell they want to call it with Kincaid and Knox in there. But Davis has shown the ability to have some big games. He just hasn't been consistent. He played through injuries last year. I think this is the year where he kind of puts it all together. We've seen it with Mike Williams where, he had a 1,000-yard season, but only one or two touchdowns. Then he had like a 700-yard season, but he scored 10 touchdowns. And then he started to put it together. I think Davis is kind of at that point in his career where he's going to put it together, and Josh Allen is going to have 2 legitimate top wide receivers. 38, I got Brandon Cooks. He just keeps putting up 1,000-yard seasons for the most part. He's got CD Lamb across from him, Michael Gallup to lift the top. I think Tony Pollard has a great year. And so I think Cooks is going to be able to produce some real nice numbers. 37, I'm a little queasy about it, but I've got Marquise Brown. I don't know who the quarterback's going to be from game to game. I don't know what his attitude is going to be with Kyler out. He wouldn't be the first wide receiver to get all pouty and force his way out of a team. But I think he is the unquestioned wide receiver 1 in Arizona, and they're going to make it a point to try to get him the ball as often as they can. And let's face it, they're going to be behind a lot. At 36, I've got Michael Pittman Jr. It's another scary one. The quarterback situations really, I'm going to be dipping into the Pepto-Bismol all season with some of these quarterback situations and what's going on with their wide receivers. Richardson missed Alec Pierce a couple several times this preseason. And we like to talk about how the Pierce skill set seems to match up better with Richardson's skill set, as he's got a big arm, good downfield ball, but they just haven't quite connected. I think Michael Pittman's still the number one in Indianapolis. I think he's still going to be the leader of the pack there. At 35, I've got George Pickens. Pickens, to me, seems like he's going to have one of those. It's like he's going to beat Gabe Davis. He's going to be 2023 Gabe Davis. He's going to have some games where he like puts up 3 touchdowns and 125 yards. And then he's going to have some games where he's like 2 for 26. But I think the whole Pittsburgh offense takes a step. I like where Kenny Pickett's at this year. I think Deontay Johnson is great and going to allow Pickens to have some room to work. So I like Pickens at wide receiver 35. At 34, I have Jahan Dotson. He just looks better and better and better. And Sam Howell seems like he's going to, be a top 20 quarterback. So I like Jahan Dotson at 34. At 33, I've got Jordan Addison. He's the 2. It isn't KJ Osborne. Osborne is still going to play decent, but I think Addison across from Justin Jefferson and with TJ Hawkinson there, I think Addison is going to be a surprise this year. I think he finishes as a wide receiver 3, so I have him at number 33. At 32, I have Mike Evans. I kept looking for reasons to put Evans higher. But unfortunately, I just couldn't justify it. He doesn't do enough after the catch. And Baker gets a little squirrely, and then there's the Kyle Trask part of it there. I think Evans gets his 1,000 yards, but I don't think it's going to be a pretty 1,000 yards. And at 31, I've got Christian Kirk. They brought him in as a 1 last year, and he played his ass off. He's not a wide receiver 1. I think he's much better cast as a wide receiver 2. And with Calvin Ridley looking as good as he's looked, I think he's going to thrive in this role. But I do think he will be the 2. So that's my 30.
All right. So at 40, I have Tyler Boyd. Kind of agree with what Matt said there. I mean, he just constantly produces, even though he doesn't, I don't think, get the recognition, probably because he has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in that offense with them. But he's a very good wide receiver. 39, I have JSN. Obviously, I know he's dealing with an injury as well. He's going to have Lockett and DK Metcalf ahead of him, but he seemed to have, or looked really good in the last 2 preseason games, a little bit that I did see of him and some of the highlights that I saw. I think he's a dynamic player. He's an incredible route runner. I think he's going to have an amazing rookie season. 38, I have Calvin Ridley. I just don't know what to do with Calvin Ridley. I thought about almost not even ranking him because I don't know that he's going to do much for this Jaguars offense. We've talked a lot before. And like when these players just miss a year because of an injury, it's hard for them to come back. No more. Calvin Ridley's missed it's been almost 2 years, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not like young.
Few games.
Either. I'm pretty sure he's like 29 years old. He missed 2 full seasons of football. It takes time to get into football shape. Evan Ingram, Dennis just mentioned Christian Kirk, who I have ranked fairly high as well. Or he might be in this. No, he's in this grouping, but he's higher than Ridley. Like, they had really good connections with Trevor Lawrence. I think it's going to be kind of hard for Calvin Ridley to just come in here and look good. Like I said, I thought about dropping him a lot lower, but I actually think the Jaguars are going to be a very good team this year. So I just kind of put him in this range. 37 for me is Juju. Kind of agree with what Dennis said. I mean, someone's going to have to catch the ball in New England. I think Mac's going to be fine this year. They don't, at least don't have a defensive coordinator calling plays now, so the offense should take at least a small step forward. At 36, I have Davis here, and I really wish I remembered which Davis this was, so we'll just keep on moving because I honestly don't.
It's got to be Gabe Davis.
Yes, that's right. Good job, Matt. Thank you. I was testing to see if you were paying
attention. Corey
attention.
Davis retired, and if you had him at 36, we might retire you.
Yeah. It is Gabe Davis. We'll see with Buffalo. He's, very much like Marquise Hollywood Brown, who I do have a little bit higher than this, but another player that I mentioned earlier, Darnell Mooney, like he's going to get you some really big games in best ball. Very, very he's going to be very, very frustrating to start in lineup leagues. Then I have Christian Kirk at 35. Just mentioned, like, he had a really good rapport with Trevor Lawrence. Maybe Ridley cuts into that a little bit. That's why I dropped him. He probably deserves to be higher now that I'm looking at this list, but that is what it is. Mike Williams at 34. It's really just betting on he's not going to stay healthy all season. I think Quentin Johnston's going to be good. I kind of agree with Matt. I have Josh Palmer not much further behind him. I actually have Quentin Johnston ranked in my top 60, I believe. Like, I think outside of Keenan Allen, Herbert's going to spread the ball around a little bit. I unfortunately wasn't able to be on the tight end episode. I actually think Gerald Everett's going to have a really good season as well. So, like, not everybody in this offense can have 700-plus yards and multiple touchdowns, and I think Mike Williams and everyone outside of Gerald Everett and Keenan Allen are going to be the ones who suffer because of that. At 33, I have Cortland Sutton. Just like I said about Judy, I just don't know what this offense is going to look like. 32, I have Allen Lazard. I think it's a big deal that he followed Aaron Rodgers over. I think Garrett Wilson's going to dominate this year, but Lazard could be really good in the red zone. I think this Jets team is going to be very good. Rodgers looked, again, I really only watched games last weekend. Rodgers looked kind of revitalized. I think he's ready to roll in New York, and I'm excited to see what that Jets offense looks like. And then at 31, I have Christian Watson. I think he is going to be the one for the Green Bay Packers. I just don't know what I think of this passing offense right now, so it's hard for me to put him any higher.
All right. Well, for me at number 40, I have George Pickens. I think he'll have some good games, but probably I think he's definitely not the number one target. I have Deontay Johnson higher. 39 for me is Gabe Davis, another guy that will have some explosive games, but I just don't. His catch percentage has never been super high. They have some other options. I think he is probably a wide receiver 3, no matter how much people want to will him higher. Number 38, I have Allen Lazard. I think he's going to be a great number 2 option there in New York. But I think Garrett Wilson is going to be by far the number 1, but Lazard, I think, is going to have a solid season. So I'm in this range. Then at number 37, I have Christian Kirk. I think it'll be another solid season for the Jaguars. I think Kirk, Zay Jones, and Calvin Ridley are all going to produce, and they still have Evan Ingram. I think they're just going to spread the ball around and be a pretty good team. Number 36, I have Jerry Jeudy. He's got that hamstring injury. I think he's probably going to miss a month of the regular season based on the way they've been talking about it. That's actually why I have Marvin Mims up in my top 60, not in the top 50, but I pulled him up because he looked really good in that third preseason game, stepping up. I think Jerry Jeudy is going to have a very slow first half of the season. Number 35, Marquise Brown. I don't think Arizona is going to be very good, which is why I didn't have James Conner super high at the running backs, but Conner and Marquise Brown are probably going to be a big part of their offense. 34, just like Matt, I have Mike Williams. I think he's going to have some good games. He'll probably have some games that will frustrate you. Will be a part of this team, but I think that they are going to spread the ball around a fair bit. Number 33, maybe I'm a little low, but I have DeAndre Hopkins. I think he'll be the number 1 target in Tennessee, but I don't think Tennessee's passing offense is going to be that incredible. So that's kind of the range where I've set him. 32, Michael Pittman. I have some of the same concerns as Dennis. I think that there'll be some growing pains with Anthony Richardson, and that's why I have Michael Pittman in the wide receiver 3 range. And then at 31, Juju Smith-Schuster. He went into Kansas City, caught 78 passes, was their leading receiver last year. I think he'll end up being the leading wide receiver, getting a lot of the targets and the work that Jacoby Myers had last year for the New England Patriots. Matt, why don't you give us your last 5 going 30 to 26?
All right, so at 30, I have Marquise Hollywood Brown. I do agree with some of the things that Dennis mentioned. Like, what exactly is this Cardinals offense going to look like with either Clayton Tune or Josh Dobbs throwing the ball? You're probably right on that, but one of these guys has to produce. And the one thing with Hollywood Brown is, while he was typically used as a deep threat in Baltimore, we saw in college, and he is a guy that I think if you get him the ball near the line of scrimmage, like he can make plays after that. He can make plays after the catch. He will get you a lot of yards. Like, I think overall he's going to be fine. I think he has a higher ceiling than 30, but I felt like this was a safe range to rank him in just because of, again, how bad the Cardinals offense is likely going to be. At 29, I have Hopkins. Like, I still think arguably, in my opinion, he's a Hall of Fame wide receiver, but I just don't know that Ryan Tannehill is going to be able to boost him into like that top 24 range. I feel like this is a fair spot for him to be, because I think Treylon Burks will still get some. They're obviously going to rely heavily on Derrick Henry as well. So it's just going to limit what I think this passing offense is going to be. And, I know A.J. Brown dominated, but his game at the wide receiver position is the complete opposite of DeAndre Hopkins. So that's kind of where I don't know that Hopkins is able to replicate what Brown was able to do. 28 is Michael Pittman Jr. I didn't know what to do with Pittman. I'm not as worried about Anthony Richardson. I think he's going to be fine. I think Pittman fits exactly the kind of wide receiver mold that's going to help Anthony Richardson in some of his accuracy issues, and that he's got that massive wingspan, massive catch radius. I think especially when they get down in the red zone, Pittman could really thrive, especially if he starts to develop that rapport with Richardson, because Richardson's got that ability to make plays with his legs. And I guarantee as soon as he gets out of that pocket, defenses are going to come crashing down on him, which could leave Pittman open. I think a lot of his season is going to depend on the touchdowns that he gets, which is hard to bet on, which is why I ranked him here. But if I'm being honest, I think he has a shot to be like a top 15 guy, but I wanted to play it a little bit safe with him. 27, I have Brandon Cooks. I mean, Dennis just talked about him a minute ago. He's got a couple spots lower than me. He's always been good. I think he's easily stepping in as the 2 in Dallas. And, CeeDee Lamb's going to at times get that bracketed coverage, which should give Cooks some play next to him. And I'm going to be honest, I think this is the best number 2 wide receiver Dak has had since he had Cooper and Lamb for whatever that was, 2 years. I know we all liked Michael Gallup and wanted him to be a thing, couldn't stay healthy, was just inconsistent. Brandon Cooks is a damn good wide receiver. I think he's going to be really good for Dak and a Cowboys team that I don't like to talk good about them, but I think they're one of the best teams in the NFC, and he could really do something for that offense. And last at 26, that brings me Brandon Ayuk. I thought he played really well at the end of last season. They still have Debo on the team, and Debo's going to get those extra rushing yards, so I ranked Debo a little bit higher than him. My other fear is obviously going to be, I know Brock Purdy, it looks like, is going to be the starter. I know he played well at the end of the last season. I still don't know that he's really like a great starting quarterback. I feel like this team is still going to be built around the run, so that limits how many wide receivers I think are going to be good. So that's what drops Ayuk down here for me.
So I have Ayuk at 30. I agree with you, Matt. My issue is that I feel like this offense can support Christian McCaffrey and then 1.5 of their other really good players. The trouble is that there's 3 of them. So between Ayuk and Debo and Kittle, any given week, one of those guys is going to get you 25 points. And the other one's going to get you probably 15. And the third one is going to get you 5. You just don't know who it's going to be. McCaffrey's going to rack up his 30 a week. So that makes me nervous. I think that like you, I gave Debo the edge because I think he gets a little bit of rushing work. I like Ayuk. I think he's a really good wide receiver, and wide receiver 30 is nothing to sneeze at. I've got Jerry Jeudy at 29. I think he's going to have the best year of the Denver wide receivers. I think he's going to get off to a slow start with the hamstring, but once he gets back, I think he hits the ground running, and him and Russell seem to have pretty good chemistry in the preseason. At 28, I've got Big Mike Williams. I think he has a specific role that he plays in that offense, and I understand they changed with Kellen Moore this year. Part of that change is going downfield more, and that's what Mike Williams does. So I like Mike Williams at 28. Got Tyler Lockett at 27. The Seattle offense is going to be a challenge for me because Smith and Jigba, Lockett, and Metcalf are all very, very talented wide receivers. And I keep coming back to the fact that Teddy Bridgewater was able to support 3 top 25 wide receivers in Carolina. And so I'm going to hang my hat that they'll be able to, where did I have JSN 43? I'm going to hang my hat that Geno can support 3 top 43 wide receivers with Tyler Lockett at 27. I think Lockett still has plenty left in the tank. And then at 26, I've got Christian Watson. Maybe I'm out over my skis here a little bit, but I do think he's the wide receiver 1 there. He's going to be the big play threat. He's going to be the guy that Jordan Love looks for when he's in trouble. I think that, Dubs is going to get plenty of work, but I like Christian Watson a lot. I think at 6'4" with his speed and his ability to run routes, I think he's going to have himself a really nice year.
All right. Well, number 30 for me is Christian Watson. I think he will be the number 1 for Green Bay. Kind of the things Dennis talked about. I just have him a few spots lower. Number 29, Calvin Ridley. I wanted to put him higher. I am hopeful he has a good season. He has looked really good in the preseason coming back, but I think all of the Jacksonville receivers are going to contribute. So I have them kind of bunched up a little bit closer. Number 28, I have Terry McLaurin. He's dealing with that turf toe injury. I still have some questions about Washington's offense in general. I think Dotson will be a little bit better. I think they're going to be a little closer together. Number 27 for me, I have Courtland Sutton. I think he'll end up as the better of the Denver receivers. I think they'll be a little bit closer, but he is going to be a big focal point early in the season. I think he's poised to have a big year. And then number 26 for me, I also have Brandon Ayuk. I like the talent, but I'm with Dennis. There are too many great players in San Francisco, and they are not a powerhouse. I don't expect Brock Purdy to throw for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns like Patrick Mahomes, and that means that there are going to be games where he and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle are trading off. So really talented player, could be a lot higher maybe on some other teams, but that's where I've got him. So before we get out of here, I'll start with you, Dennis. What is one player not in your top 50 who could surprise and end up there?
Man, there's several. Listening to you guys talk about some guys you have in that I don't. Tyler Boyd, Alan Lazard, Michael Thomas. I think for me, if I've got to pick one, I think I'm going to go with Lazard. I think Rodgers has a tendency to really force feed his number 1, but I think if he got 800 yards receiving, I think Lazard would be in the top 50. So I think Alan Lazard is a guy that who's just outside my top 50 that wouldn't surprise me if he made it maybe to wide receiver 40.
For me, it's Odell. I think both of you guys had him ranked in your top 50, or Dennis did. I think that he does have a chance to be that guy. Last time he had 1,000 yards was actually with Todd Monken in Cleveland. I think Monken knows how to use him. They'll use him the correct way. He would have had a much bigger season with the Browns had he had more touchdowns. I believe on that year, he actually only had 2 receiving touchdowns on the entire year. We know that offense revolves around Mark Andrews, but Bateman, who is dealing with the foot injury, and I did actually rank him ahead of Odell. I still think Zay Flowers is going to struggle personally. I know he played outside in college. He is not built like an outside wide receiver for the NFL. He's going to be the slot guy. I think Odell is going to be that one on the outside that Lamar is going to go to, kind of like in the Hollywood Brown role. And the one thing with Hollywood Brown, while he's a good wide receiver, he struggled with drops. That's not something we typically see from Odell. He doesn't have the burst that he used to have, and he's not going to be, what Marquise Hollywood Brown is. But I think if they use him the right way, he's a guy who could really surprise people this year.
All right. Well, Matt, I will start with you this time. Who is somebody in this range that you think could make the leap into the top 25?
Probably Pittman. I know he's fairly close. I have him at 28, but I really think he's the guy. I think he's going to be the one for this Colts offense. I mean, look, I like Alec Pierce. I said he was going to be a wide receiver 2, I think, last year. That obviously didn't happen. I think Alec Pierce is a very intriguing wide receiver, but because of what Anthony Richardson can do, they don't have, at least in my opinion, that tight end that's going to change the game for him. Pittman is that guy who can be the game changer because, again, as I mentioned, his wingspan and his catch radius, with him being able to create out of structure and play off platform, I view what Pittman doing is much like what Mark Andrews has been able to do for Lamar Jackson, because Pittman's not a deep threat. That's Alec Pierce. And when Richardson starts flushing out of the pocket, he's going to look to get rid of the ball quickly. And who's going to be sitting there in the middle of the field with that wide open catch radius? It's Michael Pittman Jr. I really think he's got a shot to be the guy this year, and I think he's going to surprise a lot of people because I think Anthony Richardson's going to have a really good year, not just rushing the ball, but passing the ball.
Well, I struggle when I look because there's I feel like if I take somebody from the 26 to 30 spot, it's like cherry picking. So I feel like, I kind of laid back and the other team missed their shot. Now I'm down here all alone. So I'm going to go at number 32 with Mike Evans. I don't believe in Baker and I don't believe in Trask. And I think that Chris Godwin is going to be the beneficiary of the passing game there because they lost Ryan Jensen again. Looks like it could be a career-ending injury. So their offensive line isn't going to be good. Evans he works downfield a little more. All of that being said, Mike Evans has put together 9 straight 1,000-yard seasons, and I think he's going to get number 10. He may be a catch and fall down guy, but when you're catching it 40 yards down the field and falling down in the end zone, you're scoring fantasy points. So I'm going to take Mike Evans as a guy that if I'm a contender and I can get him cheap because somebody's rebuilding and it's time to let him. You're getting off it. You want to sell before he retires on your roster. I think Mike Evans has a chance to sneak into the top 25.
All right. Last question, Dennis. I'll let you lead off first. Who in this range has you the most nervous?
Man, there's a lot of people that have me nervous. Well, Mike Evans for one. Jordan Addison makes me nervous. I feel like he's going to step into the 2 role, and Justin Jefferson's going to draw the heavy coverage, which should open him up. But when given the opportunity to step up last year, KJ Osborne played really, really well. And so there's always that chance that, I've been trying to talk more and more about tempering our expectations for rookie wide receivers. There's not a lot of Jamar Chases, Justin Jefferson, Odell Beckhams that come into the league and are wide receiver ones right from the get-go. And to expect Jordan Addison to do that isn't probably realistic. So I've got him at 33. There's a chance he could just need a year of seasoning. So he could end up being, the 4th option in many games with TJ Hawkinson and Osborne and Jefferson. There could be just games where it doesn't work out that he's getting the opportunities. So I'm a little nervous about Addison, but when it comes to the small wide receivers in this class, he's the one I want the most of.
I'll give you 2, and that's because I think they're paired together. Zay Jones and Calvin Ridley. Like, one of those guys is just not going to make the top 50. I have Zay Jones currently ranked a little bit lower than Ridley, but if I had to guess right now, I actually think Zay is probably going to finish higher than him just because, as I mentioned, 2 years out of football, it takes a lot to get back. Christian Kirk already has that great chemistry with Trevor Lawrence, as does Evan Ingram. I think those are going to be the top 2 options in the offense. And I think Zay Jones has a chance to be that deep threat for them, and maybe Calvin Ridley just completely slips out. I think a lot of people are betting on his 1 year, because he only did it in 1 year with Atlanta when he was the guy and the only guy. He's not going to be the guy in this Jacksonville offense. At least I don't think so. I think he has a real shot to not even drop out the top 50, maybe even the top 60. I would not be surprised if we're not talking about him not really being a fantasy asset moving forward after this year.
Well, that'll do it for the bottom half of the wide receiver draw. We will look at the top set of wide receivers 1 through 25 when we come on Friday. There are no preseason games. There's going to be a boatload of cuts tomorrow. I thought they might start making some today, but really wasn't a lot of movement today. So I'm sure there will be some surprising cuts and moves to talk about on Friday. But Dennis, if the people are feeling sad about not having any games, how can they fill that void in their life?
They can go to their favorite podcast platform and find the Fantasy Football Roundtable and click that subscribe button, download and listen. I was looking, we have 622 episodes out there. So there's plenty. You probably don't want to go back to those early ones because it wasn't always as smooth and graceful as we are now. But go give us that rating and that review.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us today. You guys have a great week, and we will see you on